Добрий день.
Hello, I welcome all of you who has joined us. Media Center Ukraine of Ukrinform is beginning its work. This is the 176th day of the heroic resistance of Ukrainian people since the moment of the full-scale invasion of Russian aggressor to our land. And today our team has prepared for you the following events. At 12 p.m. we'll have the online connection with Serhiy Bratchuk, spokesperson for the Odessa Oblast military administration, will be speaking about the situation there. At 1 p.m. Kyiv time, we'll get in touch with Serhiy Haidai, head of Luhansk Oblast military administration. We will be also speaking about the situation in Luhansk Oblast. And just now we will be speaking about the situation in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. We are in touch with Mykola Lukashuk, head of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast Council and deputy head of the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast Defense Council. Mykola, do you hear us? Hello. Hello to you. Hi. Mykola, let us still begin. How was the last day at Dnipropetrovsk region? What was happening there? What are the consequences of the shellings which took place at night? The Russian occupational troops are going on to terrorize our region, our state, our country. During the night we had several shellings. Kryvyi Rih district was shelled. This is the borderline territory together with Kherson region. There were uragans hitting the region. No one understood what they aimed, but we still registered the shellings. Well, thanks God there are no destroyed buildings and no affected people. At about 2:30 a.m., the light arms shelled Nikopol city. There are casualties there. One older woman was affected by these shellings and she's been treated now. Some buildings were destroyed. Lots of residential private buildings were affected by these shellings. The power supply was damaged, the school was damaged, and the church was shelled. The store was also damaged, which was closed there at the street. The gas and power utilities employees are working on the restoration of gas and power supply. Mykola, during the last weeks, we constantly hear about the shellings of Nikopol and Marhanets. What's the current situation as for now? And what are now, what are the damages which you can register? Well, look, if we look just at the last month, just about Nikopol Rayon, that is district, I would say there have been partially destroyed or destroyed fully more than 309 private buildings and 117 multi-storied buildings were damaged by shellings. This is just about the statistical data for the last month. The enemy is shelling from the water reservoir, that is Energodar town. The distance which is between the banks and shores in different parts is from 4 to 7 kilometers. And sometimes it may be up to 19 kilometers. The shellings are taking place during the night, not to have the direct observation when the Russian occupational troops are coming to the direct distance. They are masking, they are terrorizing, shelling Nikopol city and Marhanets. They do the same with one of our communities, Hromadas of Nikopol Rayon district. And I would like to say that as of today in Nikopol district, in spite of shellings, we have more than 15,000 of internally displaced persons who left Kherson region from the villages to Dnipropetrovsk region, fleeing from the war. We understand that these shellings are really just terror which is done by the occupiers, but the local population, do the people leave? Because we do understand that under such conditions it's also almost impossible to speak about usual life. Do you plan the evacuation from the settlements which are constantly under shellings? Our armed forces are doing everything possible for these shellings to be stopped. But what does the enemy do? After the shellings, the adversary instantly moves to Enerhodar, under the defense of the nuclear power plant. The huge number of residents in Nikopol, we have more than 100,000 population. Some of them have already moved to Kryvyi Rih and other communities, but lots of people are still staying. There are chats, there are notifications, and people are instantly responding all of the air raid signals and alerts, but that, for instance, the equipment was registered and so on. So any forced evacuation has never been planned and is not planned now. Our armed forces do everything possible to avoid the shellings, to make them impossible. What's the humanitarian situation? Do the hospitals work there? What's about the food delivery, food products? Well, look, the situation with the food is okay. The hospitals, the stores are working. There are some problems and issues during the shellings because the power supply was damaged. If we just look at Nikopol district, Rayon, almost 8,000 households were without power supply, but DTEK is working, and instantly, as soon as the military allow, the power supply is restored, and as of today, in 16 settlements of Nikopol Rayon, we have already the power supply. So the situation with the food products, with medicine, is stable. The military administration, the local self-governance authorities are working. Everybody is at its place. If we're speaking about the casualties of these terroristic shellings, what are the figures which you are registering? Look, the situation with the casualties and with the victims is very complicated because there are lots of people when the shelling is ongoing, and if there are wounded or injured, they are instantly going to the hospitals or after the morning, because lots of people just refuse to have, for instance, refuse hospitalization, for instance, if they had injuries because of the glass. But there were the situations with the shellings, people are responding. They are either using the rule of two walls or getting down to the basements if there are shellings from the water reservoir side. There are lots of private buildings there because in Nikopol Rayon, in the water reservoir area, we say that it is as if Nikopol Sea. And of course, lots of people built the buildings there with the view for the sea. To live there close to the reservoir, there are nice views there, and the fishing was well developed there, and you could also use skaters to swim, but all of those buildings are under shellings now. Speaking about the power supply damage and about other critical infrastructure, what's the current state of the water supply, maybe gas supply? Everything is working, water supply is stable. There are some problems and issues if we had some damages of several electrical power lines, but DTEK restored everything in several hours. Dear colleagues, are there any questions? Victoria Nekonechna, Ukrinform. I will have several questions to Mr. Lukashuk, so one by one then. The first question is, do you have any statistical data of the destroyed objects and perished people in the region since the beginning of the full-scale invasion? Well, look, I can give you statistics. For instance, in Kryvyi Rih district, Rayon, as of today, during the last weeks, there have been destroyed 30 private buildings, fully destroyed, that is, just grinded to the ground. Almost 500 were damaged. Of private residential buildings with different severity. And as for Kryvyi Rih region, 59 multi-storied buildings have been damaged by shellings. So this Hromada, this community is bordering with Kherson region, Oblast, and there is active warfare there. If we speak about Nikopol Rayon, since the 12th till the 16th, 309 private buildings were destroyed, 117 multi-storied buildings were damaged. If we look at the data since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, more than 1,000 buildings were destroyed. We have 7 Hromadas, communities, which are in the list of the Hromadas close to the combat areas. That is Kryvyi Rih, Shirokivka Zelenivka Hromada, Nikopol district, Nikopol territorial community, Sinelnikove rayon, because this district is bordering with two regions which has active warfare. From the one side, this is part of the Gulai Pole and Polohi of Zaporizhia region. They have active warfare, and Donetsk region as well. And in Sinelnikovo district, we have Veliko-Mikhailivska, Malo-Mikhailivska, Malo-Pavlivska, and Pokrovska territorial communities. As of the statistics, as of the number of victims and casualties, I think that will be a bit later, and our press service will give you the overall numbers. What does the region need now to organize the efficient defense? As of today, we have the defense staff and the military administration with the servicemen, the regional council and the local self-governance do everything possible to protect the region. Since the first days we created the headquarters, as of today, I'm sure that the borders of our region are reliably protected and under full control of the armed forces of Ukraine. And the last question from me. One of the top topics discussed now is the beginning of the studies. So at schools, how will the region organize this year, the studies year now? Well, look, the situation is as follows. We've checked all the educational institutions. We have 86 communities, 20 of them are cities like Dnipro, Kryvyi Rih, Sinelnikovo, Kamyanske. So till the end of this week, in the beginning of the next week, we'll take the decisions in the majority of hromadas. For instance, in Kamyansk territorial community of Kamyanske town, the academic year will take place there offline. As for Kryvyi Rih city, we have already the decision. As for Dnipro city, those are two bigger cities of almost 2 million of population living in these cities. In Dnipro a bit more, in Kryvyi Rih a bit fewer. So they already took the decision about the remote studies, because there are the situations with air raid alerts. There can be 5 to 10 alerts per day, and we understand that including the little children, it will be really hard for them to get down to the basements every time. We did everything to equip these basements with Wi-Fi, to have the toilets there, but the situation is complicated. About these two bigger cities, we decided to make the studies remote. As for speaking about the refugees, as of today, we have almost 11,000 children of the internally displaced persons registered in the schools. As of different communities, we'll give you information later. Mykola, finally, we understand that the volumes of damage and destroyed buildings is the challenge for the region and for the power of the region, for the authority. How do you solve this issue? Are there any solutions? Do you accommodate people? How do you work? What are the challenges? Well, look, the situation is this follows. Almost 310,000 of internally displaced persons are now in the communities in hromadas, as I already told you, including 15,000 of them in Nikopol district, Nikopol rayon. The vast majority of the people who came to us, especially when there was the evacuation from the neighboring regions, is Donetsk district, Kharkiv, Luhansk regions, and almost 126,000 of people are living in Dnipro. In Kryvyi Rih we have almost 60,000 of IDPs. Those are the people who are registered as internally displaced persons. So the overall number of people, 309,000 of internally displaced persons, among which almost 52,000 are men of working age, almost 107,000 are women of working age, 78,000 of children, and a bit of more than 73,000 of people with fewer mobility and people who are older than 60 years. Some of them are living at their own expense, some of them are provided by the communities. There are no issues with accommodation. Of course, some of the people moved to the western part of the country, but we can see that there are lots of people who are coming back to Dnipropetrovsk region. Mykola, I thank you that you found time and got in touch with us. I will remind you we had Mykola Lukashuk, head of Dnipropetrovsk Oblast Council. Dear colleagues, I remind you our next briefing will take place at 12 p.m. Kyiv time, and we'll be speaking about the situation in Odessa region. Stay with us.